All right, everybody. Well, welcome back to a really exciting evening we have planned for you guys. We're excited to first and foremost have a new style of webinar that we're premiering here for the first time. But before we get into all of that, first, if you haven't met me yet, my name is Adam Lang, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time to be with us tonight. In just a minute, I'm going to be introducing my co-host, Ben Adams. He's one of the top mortgage professionals in the entire industry. But tonight's updated webinar is really going to be all built around just one big question, and that is, how are buyers actually making home ownership affordable in Denver right now in May 2026? Because today's prices, interest rates, a lot of these nonstop headlines with Iran, and just a lot of stuff going on right now. A lot of people are reaching out to both of us and just wondering, does buying right now even make sense? And tonight, we're going to walk you guys through exactly what is working right now in Denver when it comes to affordability. Quick note, though, before we jump in, you guys are going to see on the right-hand side of the screen, if you guys are logged in on a desktop, we have basically a little chat feature. So as we go through the content tonight, feel free to drop questions if there are any. When we're going through this stuff, we're going to be giving you guys a lot of info, kind of info through a fire hose, so to speak. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat. We'll try our best to answer them in real time. But if we don't have an opportunity to do so, then at the live Q&A at the end, we'll make sure those are the first questions that we'll answer at that point. So please feel free to engage with us as much as you guys can there. And with all that being said, let's dive in and start off with just introducing my co-host, Ben. Ben, what's going on, buddy?
Hey, thank you, Adam, for having me on this webinar tonight. Very excited to be here. And it's frankly a discussion that we need to have. One of the top questions that I have gotten consistently over the last 3 or 4 months is around affordability. And this is what does that mean though? And I think at first glance, people might focus on one thing, or maybe affordability means one thing to this person. It means something entirely different to someone else. And in my mind, affordability can really mean three things: monthly payment, monthly cost, lack of resources for down payment, and how am I going to pay for these closing costs? And tonight, what is so exciting about this webinar is that we're going to address all three of those affordability challenges that Denver home buyers are facing. And there are real paths forward to address these. There really are.
And very few people are realizing that. And that's what's so exciting, is just to, be the messenger to actually let people know there are paths forward. The market hasn't become impossible. It's just changed this year. So the buyers who understand how to adapt are still getting great deals today. Ben just had one a couple days ago that we're excited to share with you guys. We actually both closed a deal together just this past Friday. Really good terms for those buyers. Lots of opportunity right now. And most buyers they're waiting right now instead of really getting into this. They're guessing. They're exactly why they keep missing opportunities is because they're right in front of them, but they're just not understanding how to take advantage of them. You don't need to rush, but you do need a game plan. And that's what this is all about tonight. Timing doesn't always beat strategy, but confidence always beats guesswork. And preparation is what saves buyers real money. And that way, when the home pops up that you love and it really does fit what you're looking for, at that point, you should already know exactly what your next move needs to be. So we're going to go through a lot of that with you guys tonight, specifically some exact strategies that buyers are using, as Ben said, to lower payments, compete, and actually win. If you understand what we're going through tonight, you're going to be in a completely different position than 90% of buyers out there, and you're going to be in a position to win when that day does come. A lot of people right now are, just really thinking that this is just an impossible time to even consider buying a home. But man, there's so many exciting things that Ben's going to be talking about when it comes to financing. And with that, I'd love just to kind of share with you guys a little bit about Ben and why he's so valuable to be on these webinars, co-hosting them with me every single month. And that's mainly just because of his experience. Over 22 years of experience, personally funded well over $300 million in home loans, well over 700 families at this point that he's helped achieve home ownership. And my favorite of all of these is just that he's an active real estate investor. He practices what he preaches, very passionate about all of this stuff, and also has a phenomenal YouTube channel called American Money 101, which the whole point of it is just financial literacy and just really putting everybody, and not just adults, but children, just anybody that's really just trying to improve their financial literacy. He's got some great content there as well. So Ben, really excited to have you with me again, buddy. And thank you so much for all the value that you're providing on these webinars.
Oh, I thank you, and thank you for the invitation. I'm so excited to be here. I appreciate all the kind words. Now, let me introduce you. Why listen to Adam? Well, Adam is a 42-year Colorado and Denver native, born and raised here, went to school here, University of Colorado. He recently ranked 5th out of 344 Denver agents in sales volume. A lot of agents right now are not closing deals at all. Adam recently ranked 5th. Very, very impressive. He's also a certified negotiation expert, and that is very important because one of the strategies that we're going to talk about requires a high degree of negotiation. And to be frank, there are a lot of real estate agents out there, real estate professionals, that are afraid or intimidated to negotiate, to ask for price reductions or seller concessions. And so that's something that Adam excels at. He's also the host of Living in Denver YouTube channel and the co-host of the Pursuit of Progress podcast with me. So I'm very excited to have you on the webinar tonight. Thank you for putting all this together.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah, man. Well, that's enough about the two of us. Just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a background on maybe a few reasons why to listen to us, but more importantly, we just are really passionate about all of this. So in the comments on the right-hand side of the screen, again, if you guys are on a desktop, you should be able to find it. We'd love just to start off every one of these webinars just to get a pulse in the room of how everybody's feeling right now in 2026. We're halfway through the month of May. Just how confident are you right now in buying a home? Are you a 1, meaning you think it's basically impossible? Are you a 10? You think it's no issue at all? If that's the case, I'm not sure why you guys are even on tonight, but regardless, I'm glad you are. But just give us a comment on the screen. Just let us know what you're feeling right now, what level of confidence you have. And we'll do this again at the end, and hopefully we'll see some higher numbers than we do right now. So I always like to also share a little bit of a recap on just what's going on right now in the market. I actually, to be honest with you guys, this is from about 4 weeks ago. So there's a little bit of a change since then, but really not much. It's been a very kind of stagnant market when it comes to some of these metrics with a lot of the stuff going on in Iran and just a lot of just stagnant. There's not seeing a lot of change in the past 4 weeks or so. But in late 2025, so a little bit at the end of last year, we were seeing the median home price at about $558,000 here in Denver. And that's actually down about 4% from the prior year. But basically, the biggest thing of all of these that you're seeing right now on the screen is that it is an incredible time to be a buyer. It's a very strong buyer's market. There's well over, I think it's I'm sorry, Ben, is it 300 or 600,000 more homes for sale than buyers? Is it
600,000? Yeah, there's 600,000 more sellers than buyers in this United States national housing market,
which is, I think, the most in like 20 some years. I mean, long time.
Yes.
Time on market trends. So we always like to look at this. This is the amount of days on market before a home goes under contract. And we're seeing right at about 60 days right now, which is very, very high in comparison to what we were seeing a few years back. And the benefit of that, though, is to see beyond just that number what that means. And that means that a lot of sellers are having a hard time getting their homes under contract. And what that entails from a buyer's perspective is opportunity, leveraging different ways to get your interest rate potentially lowered. Ben's going to go through a lot of that here in a minute. Being able to just get a price point that's below the listing price, getting some concessions, a lot of great opportunities right now for buyers. So just really, really optimistic when it comes to some of the opportunities that buyers have at the moment. But Ben and I are going to be talking through really just 3 specific strategies that really smart buyers are using today to win in Denver. The 3 that we're going to go through tonight. Number 1, just how buyers are lowering their monthly payments. That's what Ben's really passionate about. We're going to go into that here just in 1 minute. And then also just the hidden opportunities that a lot of buyers are missing. And then my favorite, just what's actually working in Denver right now and what's not. So let's just jump right into that first one, just how buyers are lowering their monthly payments. And Ben, you shared this a few minutes ago when we first got started. Why don't you take it from here and just kind of dig into this first point a little bit?
Yeah, there's really 3 different affordability concerns. So monthly payment, down payment, and closing costs. So for the purposes of this, we're going to focus on making monthly payments more affordable. Now, before we get into this, I think it's important to acknowledge that, hey, listen, there are challenges in this national United States housing market and in this Denver housing market. I think it's important to acknowledge that, even though values have come down 4%, which Adam just mentioned a minute ago from 2025, they're still relatively high. Property values, property taxes are elevated. Interest rates, they're not at 52-week highs, but they're higher than what they've been over the past 4 or 5 years. And so we're not pretending like there aren't any hurdles or challenges, but what's happening is a lot of these headlines are spooking buyers. They read these headlines, interest rates are high. There's concerns with the Federal Reserve, or there's more sellers than buyers, and they get scared and they disqualify themselves from purchasing. And what we want to do is to give every customer, every prospective home buyer that we work with, the resources and the ability and the confidence to make an informed financial decision based off of what they feel is in their best interest. Remember, you are in control. But there are ways to address these hurdles. And for all of those reasons, including the one that Adam mentioned about there being 600,000 more sellers than buyers, this is the strongest buyer's market we've seen in decades. And so just know that if you are a buyer, you do have options. You have more homes to consider. You are going to have the ability to ask the seller for a sales price reduction, or ask for them to pay for your closing costs, or what we're going to get in here in a minute, ask them to contribute a subsidy to pay for your temporary interest rate buy down to make your monthly payment more affordable. Very, very impactful stuff here. So most buyers think mistakenly that they have to accept today's interest rate, but that is not always true. With a temporary buy down and even a permanent rate buy down with a certified negotiation expert, you can have your real estate agent negotiate with the seller to contribute X amount of dollars, and then use that seller concession to buy your interest rate down either on a temporary basis or a permanent basis, which is then going to make your monthly payment more affordable. So what does this actually look like, and how does it work? Well, we're going to get into that here right now. This is an example of different buy downs that are currently options at the bank that I work at. So there's a 1-0 buy down, a 2-1 buy down, and also a 3-2-1 buy down. What we're going to do on these next screens is we're going to go on a little more depth on each one of these. So if you look at the top left-hand corner here, so this is a scenario where the loan amount is $500,000. The interest rate or the note rate is going to be 6.5%, and then the loan term is going to be 30 years or fixed for 30 years. On the right-hand side, we see our escrows, what the property taxes are, $200 a month, the homeowner's insurance, $195, and what the estimated monthly mortgage insurance is. So on the left here, you'll see that even though the note rate is 6.5, that in year one, this customer would get a 5.5 interest rate. And what that means is for the first 12 months, their monthly payment would be $321 less per month for the first 12 months. And that's how much they would save monthly. Now, to accomplish this, they would need a subsidy from the seller of around $3,800. Now, what's great about the temporary buy down versus the permanent buy down is that a temporary buy down is considered a subsidy. So in this scenario here, the seller would actually give the buyer $3,800, and that money would be placed in the buyer's escrow account, which I refer to as their mortgage savings account. So that entire $3,800 would be placed in the buyer's escrow account with their loan servicer, and they would control it. And then that is what is used to subsidize the reduction in the monthly payment. Now, this is very different than a permanent interest rate buy down, where a permanent interest rate buy down is a cost. So once you pay for that, it's gone. What I love about the temporary interest rate buy down strategy is that if interest rates do come down and you want to refinance, or if you end up selling the property unexpectedly, or if you pay it off for any reason, whatever is in this account here, you get that money back. So this is not a cost. It is an asset that's placed in your escrow account that is then used to subsidize the interest rate and the mortgage payment. So let's go to the 2-1 option. Now, I would say from my experience, the most popular buy down options that I have done are either the 2-1 or the 3-2-1. Now, the benefit of the 2-1 option buy down is that instead of having an interest rate that is lower by 1 point for 1 year, which is the 1.0, this is lower by 2 full points the first year, and then 1 point the second year. That's why it's referred to as a 2-1 buy down. So the exact same scenario, same loan amount, 500,000, same note rate, 6.5%, also a 30-year term. You can see in year one right here that the interest rate starting in year one is going to be 4.5% for the first 12 months. So that means the first year, the first 12 payments, this buyer would save $626 a month in year one for the first 12 payments. And then starting in year two, the interest rate would go to 5.5%. They would save $321 a month before the payment would mature to the 6.5% interest rate at the 3607. Now, the buy down subsidy for this is going to be $11,379. It's going to be much greater than the 1.0 because you get an extra year and a full point lower or 2 points lower that first year compared to the 1.0. So same thing though, that entire 11,000 is placed in your escrow account. That's your money, your money. So if interest rates happen to organically come down that over that 24-month period, whatever the prorated balance is in this account, you get that money back. So your servicer will either write you a check or it'll be subtracted off of your principal balance dollar for dollar. Let's go to the last example here, which is the 3-2-1 buy down. And this is where it gets really exciting. Now, right off the bat here, you can see that the 3-2-1 buy down subsidy is going to be much greater than the 1.0 and the 2-1 because the interest rate is going to be 3 full percentage points lower for the first 12 months. So you're going to be saving $915 every month for the first 12 months, $626 for the next 12 months, $321 for starting in year three. So that total savings over the first 36 months is going to be $22,000. Again, that $22,000 is placed in your escrow account. That is your money. That is an asset. It's in your mortgage savings account, and that is what is used to fund the buy down over the first 36 months. So if interest rates happen to come down during that 36-month period, and you want to, or just because the market improved, or maybe the Fed reduced interest rates, they came down organically, you have the ability to refinance, and you don't have to feel bad about it because whatever that prorated balance is, you will get that money back, unlike a permanent rate buy down, because the permanent rate buy down is a cost. So if you bought the interest rate down with a permanent buy down, same thing. You might have an interest rate that's going to be a little bit lower than what the market rate is, but that is a sunken cost. And so if rates happen to come down organically and you paid multiple thousands or even $10,000 to get a lower interest rate, then it's going to be very difficult to stomach that because that's gone. With the temporary interest rate buy downs, it's a subsidy. You get the money back. And so what that means is that essentially you're hedging the market. This is a great strategy to hedge the market if you do feel that interest rates are going to come down. But then again, it also just makes things more affordable from a monthly payment perspective. So if you're a first-time home buyer, you want to ease into home ownership, or maybe you feel like your income is going to go up the next couple of years, or maybe you have debt that you're going to pay off. You want to have a lower monthly payment because you want to focus on getting those student loans paid off or get that auto loan pay off. This can be a great strategy for all of that. I know it's kind of a lot of information here, but am I connecting the dots here, Adam, with what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. The only thing I'd like to have you explain a little bit more is I'm imagining a lot of the people that are on tonight are seeing $22,361.10, and they're thinking, how the heck am I going to get a seller to give me that amount of money to, get this 3-2-1 buy down? So just explain a little bit about the mindset shift of, let's just use a $500,000 home as we're using in this example. And that's what the listing price is. But again, it's such a great buyer's market right now. There's a very, very strong opportunity, strong chance that you're going to be able to get the home under contract for less than that listing price at $500,000. So let's just use an example of a $20,000 difference. So what would be better? Instead of a $500,000 home, getting it at a $20,000 reduction in sales price. So you send them an offer at $480,000. That would be option one, versus still having the listing price be what your offer's for, the full $500,000, but then have a seller credit included in the offer for that $20,000. And the benefit of that is, again, being able to use it for something like a credit, closing costs, 3-2-1 buy down, all that kind of stuff. So just maybe elaborate a little bit on that for people.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that is why it is so important to have an idea as a buyer of what you're looking to accomplish and what your goals are. And that's also why you need to be working with someone that is a certified negotiation expert, because this is where some of that negotiation comes into play. And if you're working with a real estate professional that is afraid to ask for a seller concession or afraid to ask for a subsidy for a temporary interest rate buy down, they're not going to be able to serve you. So you have to work with someone like Adam, who has experience doing this and is not afraid to ask for those concessions or the sales price reduction. Now, what you're describing is if I asked you as a potential buyer, what are you better off of? You could, the home is listed for 500,000, and you can write an offer at 480,000 and essentially buy the home for $20,000 less, or you can pay 500,000 for it and then ask the seller to give you 20,000 in the form of a subsidy. Most buyers would say, well, it makes more sense to pay $480,000 for the home because, it's I'm paying less for it. And what you have to do is we have to run the numbers both ways to make sure, not every scenario is going to be the same. Having said that, most of the time, most buyers are going to be better off going with the $500,000 sales price and having the seller give them the $20,000 in the form of a concession, because it's going to allow for a plethora of more options. And so when you have more options, you can do things like this right here. They're actually giving you the $20,000, and then you get to decide how you're going to use that. So, and another reason for that is because when a loan is amortized over 30 years, the difference in payment is very minimal.
Very minimal.
Even though you might be paying 480 compared to 500,000, the fact that it's $20,000 less, the difference in payment on that is going to be very, very small because it's amortized over 30 years. So the payment is going to be very small. If affordability and monthly payment is a focus and a concern of yours, this strategy here is going to allow you to have the biggest impact on your monthly affordability. You will literally be saving $22,361 over the first 36 months out of pocket. And that's why that amount is placed in your escrow account, is because that is what the savings is for the subsidy. So that is what you will be saving out of pocket. And then what we touched on a minute ago, how are you going to use that 22,000? Well, you can go pay off other debt. You can focus on other things. And so it just gives you more options to put that financial plan, that affordability, and that monthly budget together.
One thing I'll add on to that before moving on is, you guys, if this is seeming a little overwhelming to you, I know it has at times for me when I first got into this. Ben is great about just really dumbing this down, making it very simple to understand, where if you have questions about this and you'd kind of like to run some numbers on, potentially a home that you're looking at, or just, getting a little bit more clarity on this, you just reach out to Ben. We'll put his info on the chat here in a second. And he offers some free strategy sessions where you can just hop on a Zoom call or a phone call with him and kind of just put actually pen to paper on your specific scenario. So you can really just compare it, apples to apples, and being able to really make sure your scenario is, you're using the best opportunity for what makes the most sense for you. Okay, let's just jump into the second one. This is a great one. The hidden opportunities that most buyers are missing. Homes that are sitting on the market right now. This is a big one. As I shared a minute ago, we're at about 60 days average days on market. So anytime you're seeing homes that are on the market for 30, 40, 50 days, there's some real opportunities right now with those homes, because a lot of sellers are going to be more often flexible on price, concessions, terms, just because, let's be real, they're desperate at some point. They are not getting the interest that they maybe were expecting. And when you see that, for anybody that's just even looking on Zillow and you're seeing how long the home's been listed, when you see homes that have been on the market a bit longer, use that as an opportunity to potentially realize that home could get some negotiation tactics that we're discussing right now in your favor. So the longer a home sits, definitely the more leverage that you can gain.
And as I just interrupt you really briefly, most people look at a home that's been sitting as, what's wrong with this property? Mm-hmm. And that's where you have to shift your mindset, where you have to look at it as an opportunity. This home's been on the market for 3 weeks. Well, I probably can get a sales price reduction, or get the seller to pay for my closing costs, or get them to pay for a subsidy so I can have a lower interest rate. That is how you have to think.
And there's other ways you can identify outside of just the days on market when you guys are searching on Zillow. Anytime you see price reductions, that's often signaling that that seller's motivated. So if you see a price reduction on Zillow recently, that's telling you that those sellers are probably very willing to entertain an offer, even if you think it might be low. It's still worth putting it out there. You never know. But also, anytime that you see a listing that has come back on the market, this is really popular or common in the first quarter of the year, because what happens is people try and sell their home in the fall. As soon as kind of the end of Thanksgiving, early December hits, it's the slowest month of the year. People just have completely different priorities at that last month of the year, holidays, all that kind of stuff. So a lot of people will actually take their home off the market at that point. So when you see it, that it's been back on the market, that's also another opportunity just to realize that, hey, it didn't sell before. So again, maybe you have a little bit more leverage. It's always important when you guys are searching on Zillow, or if you ever connect with somebody like myself, we can set you up with custom home searches where it's a lot more in depth than what you'll find on Zillow. But under the price history tab, this is a great opportunity to really pay more attention to that and realize when you can see, price reductions, when it was, taken off the market, when it's put back on. So that's another great opportunity. And then the last one is just, unfortunately, you see this a lot on Zillow, but homes that have really poor marketing. Not to dog on any certain, real estate brokerages out there, but there's certain brokerages that really use their selling point as being a low commission type brokerage. Not Redfin. What's the word I'm looking for? There's one that always is just doing 1%. And what happens is when
Yeah.
you're paying a lower percentage on your commission to your selling agent, that selling agent's probably going very low quality pictures. They're not doing video. They're really, trying to keep their costs as low as possible because they don't have as much money in it for them. So when you see homes that just have poor marketing, just, maybe not very well written descriptions, those are kind of opportunities to see that kind of stuff and realize that maybe the reason that the home's just still sitting is just because it's not been marketed appropriately.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of sellers that get focused on cost with those discount brokers instead of the value that the agent is bringing. And so that is the same thing with buyers. We want to focus on value here tonight with this webinar. We want to focus on value when you're out writing offers, so you can take advantage of this market and have that plan for yourself and for your family, and know what is most important to you. So someone like Adam can be that certified negotiation expert and go to bat for you and ask for you and negotiate with the sellers exactly what you're looking to accomplish to put you in the very best financial position moving forward.
Mm-hmm. And we already kind of touched on some of the stuff you guys are seeing on the screen right now, but just some of the ways to take advantage of identifying those opportunities. Don't assume something is wrong. Just do your own investigation instead. So even if the home has been on the market for 60 days, it's still worth, scheduling a showing, going out to see it for yourself. You'd also be amazed at how many buyers have a very limited mind, where they're not willing to kind of see past certain cosmetic flaws that are really a very minimal thing in the big scheme of things, but it might be enough to kind of deter them from even considering it as their home. Bad paint colors, maybe just dirty, maybe old appliances, maybe the carpet's old and hasn't been replaced. Those are all things that are very easily overcome once you buy the home. So anytime that you see stuff like that, those are opportunities. And then also, if you do get a home that you're interested in, once you get under contract, once you submit an offer and you get it accepted, just because it's accepted doesn't mean that you're buying the home. You still have plenty of opportunities to get out of that contract.
Yeah.
And in part of that contract to close phase, once you're under contract, you're going to have some opportunities such as the inspection, where you'll be able to really dive a little bit deeper into the home at that point and see if there's any skeletons in the closet, see if there's any bigger issues that maybe have deterred other buyers. But so you have opportunities to still avoid, getting in too deep and being able to get out of that offer, out of that contract, if you find stuff that just is beyond what you're willing to take on.
Mm-hmm.
And other than that, just a few others there, but this is my favorite, what's actually working in Denver and what's not. And Ben and I both have some good stuff to share on this one. So, what used to work is coming in, this is back in 2019, 2020, when interest rates were 3% or below. what happened then, it was so competitive that, coming in way over asking price, you had to eliminate all your contingencies just to get the offer accepted. So you would waive things like the appraisal if you were doing a cash offer, waiving the inspection, doing all these things that were really not in the best interest of the buyer. No longer that's how things are, being done. Right now, what's working is just really having clean, well-written offers. The key there is well-written offers, strong terms, flexibility, and more than anything else, just creating this win-win scenario for both, not just you, the buyer, but also the seller, making sure that you're understanding that the reason for that seller to be selling their home could be a lot of different things other than just trying to get the highest price possible. Lots of things that could be a little bit more negative that are causing them to sell: a death in the family, divorce, maybe they're empty nesters or kids are graduating and they're trying to downsize. There's so many different scenarios out there. So don't just assume that it might just be that they want the highest price possible. There's really, really great ways to structure offers, to be creative, be intentional about making it not just about the buyer, but also the seller, to make them also feel like they're part of this and committed and in winning as well. Really, really important right now to be mindful of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that's one thing I have always valued and appreciated with you, Adam, is that you are willing to make those calls. I can't tell you on the lending side, and one thing that I love about my job is that I get to work with buyers and real estate agents all across the United States and all these different markets. So I get to go to school every day. I get to put my thumb on different pulses of different markets in different states. And so I get very educated on what's happening all across the United States. And I'm constantly amazed at how few agents out there will actually pick up the phone, call the listing agent, and just get the 411 on the seller. Why is the seller selling? What are their motivations? What are they looking to accomplish? Is there anything that I need to know when I'm putting this offer together to that your seller is looking for? And the reason that's important is because Adam is going to be asking for some things for his buyers. He might be asking for a seller concession or a sales price reduction. And I used to have the limiting belief that the best offers were, one party would win and the other would lose. But you are so good at writing these offers, Adam, where you can really make them a win-win.
Thanks, man. Yeah, and actually, I'll just share a quick story on that. So Ben and I both collectively were part of a great deal about a week and a half ago that just closed. Some really, really great family that relocating here from out of state, and Ben and I both just really gave them a phenomenal experience from start to finish. I'll toot our own horns there with that, but the reason for that is both Ben had some really good stuff that he was able to do with their lending side, but also on my end, just understanding, again, by picking up the phone, understanding that the seller in this case was a single mom who had a daughter that was graduating high school, and or sorry, not graduating, but just wanted her to finish the semester at her school because they were going to be relocating out of state after the home sold. So we realized that was really important to the seller to be able to stay in the home until graduate or until the end of the school semester, let her daughter, just enjoy the last few weeks of school with all of her friends before moving out of state. And we were able to get that type of intel from the selling agent. And by knowing that, we're able to write in the contract, in the offer, that we were going to offer a lower than asking price. But in order to have that a little bit more well received, doing so in a strategy where we offered her free rent, what's called a post-closing occupancy agreement, where after she actually had the home sold, after the closing date, we allowed that seller to still stay in the home for a few additional weeks. She's actually still there right now for about another 10 days. And that allowed her to have a little bit more casual, less stressful experience with getting moved out of the home, letting her daughter, finish the semester out. And I think probably more important than any of that is the fact that by doing something like this, having that closing, the seller now gets all of the proceeds and now has the money and ability to then write an offer on her next home and not have it be conditional on her selling this home first.
Yeah.
So it really benefits her as well when it comes time for her to be placing offers on a new home, because anytime you have an offer that's conditional on you selling your current home before being able to buy the new home, that oftentimes will still work and pan out and be, a win. But a lot of times sellers aren't willing to accept that, especially in a competitive market. So being able to again, just have some strategy, some insight ahead of time, and understanding what's important to the seller. And one last thing before I pass it back to Ben, by doing all of this, what it does is it creates this much more positive relationship between both parties from day one. And by
Yeah.
having that
Yeah.
better relationship with the other party from the very beginning, you're starting off on the positive, good foot. So then a week or two later, when you have things like an inspection and things do come up, you're a lot more likely to get some of those concessions, some of those inspection objections to be addressed because you've got this much more healthy relationship with the other party. Just really,
So
really helps getting through that easier when you have a win-win from day one like this.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you called the listing agent, you identified what the primary concerns or maybe goals of the seller was. You put the contract together in a way where you are mindful of what those are, but then at the same time, you're also representing your buyer and using that kind of as an opportunity and a sounding board to then get those things that were important to your buyers. And in this case, it was a pretty significant sales price reduction based off of the asking price. So just talk about that really quick.
Yeah, I think it was about $30,000 below the listing price, and that was after they had just also done a price reduction. So we're able to get the home, I think, at a very strong dollar amount. I think it was a very, very good purchase for my clients, for our clients, as
I
Ben's
mean,
clients as
that's
well.
amazing. $30,000 under the asking price. That's
Yep,
awesome.
yep. And this would be an example of what Ben was talking about earlier with the 3-2-1 buy down. This would be they didn't use it for that, but this would be an example where, they could have a very, very low interest rate for the first, year, second year, third year, being able to take advantage of those types of strategies too.
That's
So
phenomenal.
overall, just kind of to close out this strategy, what's so, so important is just understanding that this isn't a me versus you competitive type environment with realtors on either side of the transaction. Yes, the realtor that I'm always representing my clients as, they're mine. I'm not in the best interest of other people other than just my clients. But there is still ways, there's still strategies where everybody can come out feeling like they got something out of the deal, to feel like they won. And when you have that, that's always going to be the best possible outcome. That's the highest probability of making it to the closing table when you have that type of dynamic between both parties.
Mm.
Anything else, Ben, on that point before we move on to the Q&A?
I don't think so. Not on my end.
Okay. I guess actually before we do the live Q&A, just really quick, let's just run through. Ben and I have this on our other webinar. We have a couple different topics of webinars. Our main one that we do, we always love to share this because these are just really, really important to keep in mind for you guys, the buyers. So we'll just run through these really quick before opening up for some Q&A. The 3 biggest mistakes that home buyers are making. I'll do number 1, and then I'll let Ben do the second one. So the first one is overlooking hidden costs. Ben touched on this earlier, but outside of just the price of the home, there's a lot of other costs that you have to really be very mindful of going into any home that you're considering purchasing. There's things like homeowners insurance, property taxes, different closing costs. And the one that I'll just kind of briefly mention here is the property taxes. Every state's different. In Colorado, we have assessments every 2 years. But the bigger part of this is that I really want to make it clear to you guys that might be from out of state tonight, understanding that in Colorado, it can vary significantly from one area to the next. So there's areas close to where I live in Littleton, down a little bit further southwest of me, an area called Sterling Ranch that I like to use as an example, where the annual property tax rate down there is about 1.4%. So a $500,000 home, we'll use that as an example again, you're looking at about $7,000 for the annual property tax on that home. There's other more mature, more established neighborhoods closer to the Denver metro area that are maybe more in the 0.4% annual property tax rate. So $500,000 home, in that case, you're looking at, $2,500. So very, very big differences, even in things like property taxes from one home to the other, as well as HOAs, just a lot of other things that go into this. So one thing that Ben is really, really good at is if you guys start to find a few different homes that you're interested in, send it over to Ben and he'll actually pull together a report that shows you not just, certain things like the interest rate or the, just the high, not just the high level stuff, but he'll really be able to give you an understanding of all in, what to expect, what's an actual quote for homeowners insurance on that house, what are the property taxes, HOAs, is it in a metro tax district, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and the reason for that is because we want our buyers making decisions with confidence. The worst feeling in the world is to get an offer accepted and then find out after the fact that the payment's going to be $750 higher than what you were anticipating. And so we want to make sure that every buyer that we work with is able to make an informed decision and have realistic expectations of what the financing terms look like, of what the cash due at closing is going to be, and most importantly, what that monthly payment is going to look like, not only including principal and interest, but also some of those other costs, property taxes, homeowners insurance, and then HOA if applicable. And then that way, they can really make an informed decision on how they want to write the offer. And to Adam's point there, well, maybe that payment's a little bit higher than I want to pay right now, but maybe, is there any way we can get that down? And then maybe that opens the door for Adam to write an offer that's going to incorporate a subsidy for a 2-1 buy down or a 3-2-1 buy down. So a lot of times, if we know what those issues are or those hot points with the buyer, we can put a financing package together in a way that's going to meet those needs and goals. We have other buyers that we work with that are really sensitive to down payment or cash due at closing. The bank that I work for, North Point Bank, we have over 23 loan programs that offer minimum down payment, reduced down payment, or down payment assistance. And that's really, really remarkable. And we have gotten buyers into homes with as little as $1,000 out of pocket. And that's happening right now. There are loan programs nationwide and in Denver for down payment assistance in the form of a silent second mortgage. There's grant programs, and this is not too good to be true. This is happening right now.
Love that. That is probably the most inspiring thing of the entire call tonight, guys. So really take that seriously. There are opportunities out there, regardless of what, negativity you're hearing in the news. There's still ways to succeed right now. So very, very important to understand that. I'll really quickly go through the second one, guys, neglecting home inspections. So on our other webinar that we do, we go a lot more in depth on the entire process of what it takes to buy a home. We actually have an acronym that we created called the CLOSE method. So if you guys haven't joined us on that webinar, make sure you guys keep in touch with us. Go to denverwebinar.com and maybe sign up for the next one that we do on that, because we go into this a lot more in depth on that one. But it's so important just to understand that home inspections are a necessity, in my opinion. Yes, they do have a cost associated with them, but the protection that you get from avoiding some very, very costly mistakes down the road is well worth $300 to $500 for a typical inspection. I'm not going to go too much in depth here, but there are 2 additional inspections in Colorado that are really important, that for any of our out-of-stater people on the call tonight that might not realize this. One being radon. It's a odorless gas and get trapped below the subfloor of a home. It's really common out here, and it's very important to get that mitigated. So that's always a test that we'll do during home inspections. It's only about $80. And oftentimes when it does come at a high level, it is almost a 100% guarantee that we'll be able to get the seller to agree to some level of concession or even to install what we call a radon mitigation system. They usually cost about $1,500 to $2,000 to add that to the home, just to make sure that all of that radon concerning area that might have radon is getting pumped out of the home. And then the second one would be a sewer scope. So in Colorado, we have a lot of big mature trees, a lot of homes that were built earlier in the century, like homes that are bungalows from the 1920s and 30s. A lot of those were clay pipes, the sewer line going from the house out to the main street where the main sewer line connects. Oftentimes these can get issues over years where the clay starts to deteriorate. Some of these big tree roots impede on the sewer line. And man, if this ends up happening and it is to the point of potentially backing back up into the house, I've seen sewer scope concerns where we've had to get these repaired where the quote was so high that we ended up walking away from the deal. We're talking $20,000, $30,000 sometimes just to get that repaired. So you can imagine not doing this $125 inspection, buying the home 6 months later, having your sewer line back up and realizing that you have a $30,000, project that you have to now deal with and pay for, where your entire front lawn's getting ripped up and a nightmare. Nobody wants to deal with that. So just make sure you guys are aware that these 2 additional inspections are low cost and have a huge upside if you do end up finding something of concern. And then Ben, let's close out the third one. I know you got some good stuff on this one.
Yeah, and the emotional decision making is so important to acknowledge. And I always share with buyers, I want you to be emotional and excited and have positive energy about this home buying process because I think it's really, really important. I remember buying my first home in Phoenix, Arizona back in 2010. And I remember walking through the home and going in the backyard and just envisioning my kids are someday going to be playing in this backyard, my dog, and I had all these dreams and these goals and these things that I wanted to do with the property. And so that part's very important. That's what makes us human. That's why we get excited. But at the same time, you also don't want to let those emotions drive your decision making. And that's why I think it's so important to acknowledge what your financial boundaries are. What is your budget? What are you comfortable coming into closing with? Uh, as far as your down payment, what's the max that you can afford? What's the max that you're comfortable paying? You want to identify these things because as you're out there looking, there is going to be an emotional component. And if you don't identify what those financial boundaries are, you're more susceptible to making emotion-based decisions. And that is where home buyer regret can come from when you allow your emotions to really be that driving factor with your decision making. One story that I love sharing is I was at an open house a couple years ago, and my role at the open house is I was the greeter. I was the person at the front door that would greet folks as they came in. I would take their name and then escort them over to the real estate agent that I was co-hosting with. And I met this couple who lived in the neighborhood, and I asked them if they were in the market to buy, and they just shared with me that they were out enjoying their Sunday morning and they were just going for a walk in the neighborhood. They said that they were not in the market to buy, and they were very serious. They just saw the sign on the street, walked up to the front door, and wanted to check out the home. Well, 15 minutes later, they start talking to me about wanting to write an offer. And I thought they were joking. I was like, well, you're not serious. You just told me you're walking down the street and no, but they were serious. And so I was like, wait, 15 minutes ago, you were having a cup of coffee and out for your Sunday walk. And now you're talking about buying a $500,000 home. Like, so that is an
Insane.
example of what emotional decision making can look like. You do not want to be that person where you're out walking your dog on a Saturday afternoon and you come back under contract for a $500,000 or $1 million property. That is where the regret comes from. So I'm very big on planning. I'm very big on making informed financial decisions. I'm very big on defining what those boundaries are, because when you can lead with those things, it makes it so much less stressful. And then you can buy a property that not only aligns with your dreams and your emotions, but also those financial considerations as well. And when you have alignment in all of those different categories, that is how you win with home ownership.
Absolutely. I guys, one last thing I'll just share really, really quick. One great strategy. We share this again on our other webinar, but a really fun dinner table exercise with whoever you're going to be living in the home with is just talking through what are your non-negotiables. What are the things in this new home that are a non-negotiable? School district, maybe a certain type of a backyard, a certain layout of the home with where the bedrooms or the kitchen is located, all that kind of stuff. Just really understanding what are absolute non-negotiables, and then sharing that with your realtor, somebody like myself that sets up a custom home search. And by doing so, now you're only seeing homes that truly fit what you're looking for, and you're avoiding even going into homes that maybe look amazing and they have this kitchen setup that you've never seen before and you're falling in love with it, but it's missing an extra bedroom that you're going to need in a year or two, or you're letting that emotion get the best of you. So just really, really important to kind of take some of these strategies that we share, and just really putting that into action, just to avoid at all costs the temptation of some of this emotional decision making. Okay, guys, let's close this one out. Just a couple last slides. First off, when it comes to extra additional strategies for success, make sure you guys are open to different home types, different neighborhoods. Sometimes new construction right now is a great option if you're looking for lower interest rates and some of this affordability related stuff. Make sure you're planning for closing costs, as Ben shared. Lots of other things outside of just the price of the home. But being a buyer's market right now, you're able to hopefully get a lot of that paid for by the seller. If you guys have a good real estate agent to really help negotiate that kind of stuff, just a lot of stuff that's really important to be mindful of as you guys kind of get started in this process. And to dive deeper into a lot of this, we have a lot of other content to consume if you guys need it. So after tonight's webinar is over, I'll be sending you guys an email. It's going to have Ben's info, my info, lots of additional guides, resources, including over 2 hours of video content that goes through the entire home buying journey from start to finish, how to write an offer, how to do home inspections, even before that, even just how to start going out and touring homes, all that stuff. So feel free to dive into that if you guys want a little bit more clarity on specific parts of this process. And we're going to be sharing, again, all that stuff with you guys in an email at the end of tonight. And next steps to move forward. I think the first thing, if you guys are even considering buying a home in the next 6 to 12 months, maybe even the next 2 years, connect with Ben. Just find out today just what really it's going to take in order to be in the best position possible when that day comes. You'd be amazed at sometimes these little things that you don't realize until talking to an expert like Ben to realize that, you really need to take a few things a little bit more seriously. You need to take a few steps today. So when that time does come, you're going to be able to qualify for the best loan terms. You're going to be able to actually make this dream a reality.
That's right. And at the end of the day, Adam and I are here as a resource to you. That's all that I want to be. That is all that he wants to be. We want to be a resource. And the reason I say that is because I just look back over the last 20 years, my own financial journey. No one taught me financial education in high school. I made a lot of mistakes. I didn't necessarily have parents that were setting the best example. I didn't have any financial mentors. And so I would love to be a resource and help people make decisions that are empowering, that are in their best interest, and that they can truly benefit from. I get to go to school every day. I work with buyers from all different walks of life, folks that are wage earners, entrepreneurs, sole proprietors, folks that are business owners, investors. And I get educated every single day. What's working, what's not working. And so I want to be able to share what I have learned from others, what I have learned myself, the wins, the losses, so you can benefit and pass that value forward.
Very, very inspiring, Ben. Thank you for sharing that. With that, guys, let's open it up to any questions. I haven't seen anything yet in the chat, so we'll just kind of hang out here for a minute or two. I know sometimes people on these webinars get a little bit nervous, so Ben will put in the chat here his digital business card where you guys can schedule a one-on-one session with him if you have some specific questions to get started on this loan process, just the pre-approval. And again, at the end of tonight, I'll be sending you guys an email that has both his and my info along with all those other free resources. So with that being said, we'll just hang out here for a minute. If no questions come in, we'll wish you guys a great night and look forward to hopefully connecting with you guys here really soon. All right, guys, we will catch you guys on the next one. Really appreciate your time tonight. And thanks again. Hopefully we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time.